second morning session. It's really exciting to see everyone's engagement and enthusiasm for being here together and continuing to both learn and network around these important topics. My name is Alison Powell, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Media Communications here at the LSE, and I've been on the advisory panel of the Better EdTech Future for Children project. So I'm really honored to be chairing this session where we're going to hear about the various different parts of this project. We have four panelists who are here in the room. We have Sandra El-Gamaraya and Kasia Suliga, and online we have Aisha Atabey and Emily, who is a Five Rights Youth Ambassador. I'm going to get our guests to introduce themselves, and I'll start with Sandra, then I will move to Aisha, Kasia, and Emily in that order. So please let us know. Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. So my name is Sandra, and I am leading on the Better EdTech Futures Virtual Project. This project is a joint project between LSE and the Better Foundation. And what we're looking at is how does EdTech impact children's learning and children's rights. So their rights to whatever privacy, protection from commercial exploitation, inclusion, expression, and education. And we're also aiming to stimulate a national conversation. So the research is focused really on children's rights. So we're drawing a lot on the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, but also other things like General Comment 1 on the age of education, General Comment 25, the rights of children in the online environment. And we're looking at education theories as well. So we're kind of thinking of, okay, EdTech is in the classrooms. What does this mean for how children learn? What do theories say about children's learning? So children learn through interactions with others, with more knowledgeable peers, more knowledgeable teachers or parents or adults. This interaction is important, and experience is important, and a bit of challenge is important. So how is EdTech important? Between October and December 2025, so a few months ago, we went to 5 primary schools and 6 secondary schools across the United Kingdom. So in each of the 4 nations, we went to at least 1 school in each nation. And we did child consultations with over 450 children between the ages of 6 and 17. So we got children across all the age groups. And we asked them, what EdTech do you use? And by EdTech, we kind of mean physical devices, apps, software, things that are deployed by the schools for children to use for classwork and for homework. What do you think about these EdTech products? Do they actually help you learn? Would you change anything about them? What do you think about the features? So we were trying to get children's perspectives on all of this. And very briefly, because I probably don't have very much time, but we found several things. So we went to different types of schools, including faith-based schools, but also a school for children with special educational needs, reference schools, multi-academy trust. So we tried to diversify the types of schools we went to. We found that there was so much diversity across schools and what devices children used. So for example, some schools had drones and robots and VR headsets and FIFA, whatever, Nintendo Switch, and other schools had PCs. Children couldn't take laptops home with them for homework, so they ended up doing homework on their smartphones. And this was quite common when children couldn't take a device with them. So what does this mean for equity? What does this mean for, growing divides? There are differences in apps. So while some schools had kind of industry standard apps for children, let's say something like Photoshop, and they pay to get this app for the children because it's what would benefit them for the future. Other schools used free versions of apps because their budgets were quite limited, with limited functionality. What does this mean for learning when children have, there's such a variety in what children across different schools have access to? There was also we're thinking about commercial exploitation. So some children would sign up for free trials, and then forget. I mean, they risk forgetting to cancel their subscription, which can be an issue. And then policies. So policies differed hugely across schools. If we're thinking about AI, some schools considered AI unsafe for children, so children should not be using it. If they use it, it's only under the supervision of an adult in like an ICT or digital skills class, whereas other schools found it their responsibility to teach children how to use AI responsibly, but they're using it anyway. Someone has to teach them, and so the schools took that responsibility and they incorporated it into lessons. So you can see there's so much variety. Do I have a minute? I don't know what I'm doing. One more sentence. Gamification was very common across EdTech products. AI was very commonly used, so we can probably talk more about that later. And lots of monitoring and filtering of what children were doing on devices. Brought up questions of where is this data being saved? Do children know what information, what screenshots are being taken, and what those are being saved? So these are some emerging findings from the research. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. I have a lot of the details of these findings, but we'll leave that for a moment. And I'm going to allow Isa to let us know more about their work.
Hi, I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, fantastic, great. I am Aicha Atabey. I'm a researcher and a lawyer working on child-centered AI design, AI regulation, and data governance, specific focus on the education sector recently. And I currently work as a postdoc researcher at the University of Edinburgh, also collaborate with colleagues at the DFC on projects on child rights in the context of AI use in EdTech, data protection, and AI regulation. Today, I will talk about a recent project we had on Gen AI using EdTech and a child rights audit we conducted. So we are being told almost daily that Gen AI transforms education, personalized learning, reduce teacher workload, unlock creativity, support accessibility, and prepare children for the future. But before we really accept that story, we should pause and ask two questions. So whose future is being built here and at what expense? So with Dr. Kim Silwander and Professor Sonia Livingston, we carried out a child rights audit of 5 widely used Gen AI tools in educational contexts. Following consultation with children, teachers, and EdTech experts. We looked at Character AI, Grammarly, Magic School AI, Microsoft Copilot, and Mind's Eye Smartbox. We examined how these tools impact children's rights, including, for example, rights to education, privacy, play, safety, as set out in UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and General Comment 25. What we found was deeply concerning. We found that these tools can offer some possibilities for creativity, accessibility, and expression, but the evidence for educational benefits was limited and often unverified. By contrast, the risks were very concrete, already visible, poor transparency, commercial tracking in ways that raise serious legal concerns, manipulative nudges, exposure to advertising infrastructures that have absolutely no place in children's learning environments, and outputs that are simply not appropriate to UK contexts, including, for example, giving a child in the UK a US helpline number when that child asked for help in a suicidal state. So these things should have no place in education or in any tool that children interact with. But one point I really want to stress here is that none of this means AI should have no place in classrooms, nor does it mean the answer is so-called banning these tools or exclude children from these tools. In fact, we explicitly warned against that in relation to Character AI. In our report, we set out risks for children and the ways in which we found didn't comply with the law. But the way forward is to fix those problems, not to exclude children. A few weeks later, after our report, Character AI decided to make itself a +18 platform. And recently, it has launched a specific version just for teens and one for adults. We know children already use these tools, sometimes regardless of age limits, and they're already being affected by them. And as our report also showed, there can sometimes be benefits for them too. So the issue is not simply whether children should or should not have access, but really making these tools child rights respecting for children and rights respecting for everyone. These systems are entering into education not because we have people demonstrated they're beneficial for children, but because market incentives are moving faster than public scrutiny and child-centered design. And that is a central problem. Children are not being treated as right holders in the design, governance, or evaluation of these systems. We found that their perspectives were largely absent. Their vulnerabilities were not adequately taken into account. Their rights to privacy, safety, and protection from commercial exploitation were repeatedly undermined across all 5 tools that we looked into. In some cases, we found tools presenting harmful or misleading content, encouraging unhealthy emotional dependency, activating advertising trackers, or failing to provide reliable safeguards when children sought help. Even where tools showed promise, especially for children with disabilities or those needing support with communication, that promise was also undermined by inaccessible protection and design choices. And none of the tools offered remedies that were meaningfully available to children. So the real question is whether we are willing to allow education to become another testing ground for a system that are insufficiently evidence, commercially driven, and only belatedly governed. We should remember that education is not a market opportunity, it's a public good. And if Gen AI is to have any legitimate place in education, then child rights and data protection impact assessments must be mandatory, safeguards must be accessible and effective, and children must have a meaningful say in decisions that shape their learning environments. These are all the things we and the colleagues at DFC and Fire Rights Foundation have been calling for so many years. And it is also worth saying that this very clearly. Many of the challenges we are now facing, including fabrication of personal data, some of the safety risks identified in a report, would not have arisen in the same way if there had been compliance with and the enforcement of existing laws, especially data protection law, and crucially, the age-appropriate design code. Companies often complain that the law is too abstract, the concepts like fairness are too vague, or that there is not enough guidance. But the age-appropriate design code, in my view, is actually one of the most concrete and practical steps, set of design standards we have. And yet we found so many data and design practices against its standards in the report. So AI does have potential to enhance children's education and their lives. But what our evidence shows is that this will not be possible unless companies first comply with the existing laws and take child rights holistically into account. What our report offers is a starting point about what good looks like. It shows what is not working, where failures are, and therefore where change is needed. And the answer is definitely not to exclude children from these systems. The answer is to fix them. It's for companies to do their work, make these systems good for children, both now and in the future. And thank you for listening. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Aisha. I am going to pass on to Kasia.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Kasia Suliga, computing teacher and a computing lead in a primary school. I've never heard so many people talking about a digital future for children as I have the last 2 hours. And I have to say that as much as it is comforting, it's worrying that we as educators have no idea what is happening. We have no idea what is happening. I've been working as a computing teacher, but computing lead for the last 5 years. And the changes that I've seen and I'm still experiencing are massive. Everything is changing. We are a leading school for robotics, so I strongly believe in a hands-on approach in learning. Robots, EdTech platforms, AI, everything is in place in our school. And I'm talking primary school. But in the middle, in a very heart of all those changes, I can see a massive importance, a huge importance of an online safety. And this is our job. This is my job in our school. When I started 5 years ago, I was doing 3 online safety sessions across a year group starting from year 1. We are now in year 5. I'm doing 6 online safety sessions per year group, starting with children at the age of 3. And I just had an issue last week, 2.5 years old, talking about some content on YouTube that they saw on the parent's phone. So I'm still late. I do believe that they should every word that was said. I do believe that we should be told how to stay safe. They should not censor. They should not be able to Matthew, thank you, said to be the ground for experiments. And at the moment, I feel in our school as a computing lead, I am driving a beautiful car as an online safety specialist, although I don't feel like one after what I heard. But I'm still a specialist in my school, delivering online safety sessions. Apart from all those online safety sessions, we do have open classroom events where the parents can come and stay for the workshop with their children, workshop delivered by the class teacher. But my aim is to be driving a bus with everyone on board, so everyone knows what we're doing, so everyone feels safe with this changing environment. Because at the moment, we have children in the school that are either threatened by AI and the vision of there is no future for me, or AI is the answer for every question that I have. Now, AI should not be an answer, it should be a tool to be a thoughtful user, creative thinker, and a future designer.
Great. Thank you, Kesha. I'm going to move to Emily, who's the Five Rights Youth Ambassador.
Hi, yeah. I'm Emily, and I'm 16 years old and in year 11 currently. I'm a member of the EdTech Youth Advisory Board for the DFC and a Five Rights Youth Ambassador. I became a Five Rights Youth Ambassador because I think it's really important that we have a say in how our rights are upheld in this rapidly changing space. And I first became interested in child rights when I was 11, reading a book about them. And I was really shocked at how easily large organizations can just disregard our rights. And I felt like I wanted to take action to support these. So EdTech is a massive part of my life. It's completely transformed the way I study. I started using it heavily during lockdown because the home learning, we needed to be set tasks through many different forms, and that sort of introduced me to technology in general. And it has massively transformed. It's in some ways safer. We're not being set videos on YouTube where we can access harmful content through that. So it has improved in some ways, but there's still many problems with it. And it can often disadvantage students, or it can be inconvenient, and the utility is something that should be considered as well. I mean, I'm for EdTech. I think it's brilliant and it's helped me in many ways. But it's definitely really essential that it's carefully considered, especially since we often have no choice but to use it. So I think it's really important that we get a youth perspective is included as well. Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Thanks so much, Emily. I've got some questions for the panelists. I'm going to start with Sandra. So based on the work you've been doing at the DFC, what have you learned about how AI-driven EdTech is shaping children's experiences and also their rights? And what do you think needs attention in this space?
I think through the research, we found AI was embedded in apps as well as being used separately, like Gen AI, like chatbots and all of that. Many of the apps that children and teachers used had AI. It automated things, so it kind of created the homework questions. It marked everything, so it saved teachers a lot of time. It analyzed the data so quickly that teachers could just see, children complete the homework and they have this overview of children's performance and who might need more help here, who might need help there. And I think a lot of teachers thought that was very helpful. And they felt that they could spend more time, catering lessons to children's needs and that sort of thing instead of spending time marking. Children's experience of the same apps was often quite different, as in they found this automation usually unhelpful. Questions that were automated, like questions for homework, were not always clear. They couldn't understand what they were being asked to do. often the answers they had to put in were like one-word answers, or tick this, and when they typed in the answer, even if they had a spelling mistake or wrong punctuation or wrong capitalization, it was considered wrong. And I don't know, I couldn't grasp that they knew the answer. So they might know it, but the homework wasn't allowing them to actually reflect what they knew. The feedback they complained a lot about the feedback received through these apps because they couldn't understand what they did wrong. They couldn't understand how to fix it. They were very frustrated, really upset. And this is when they often turned to things like ChatGPT, Snapchat, Snap AI, Got AI, Copilot. They mentioned a few different kind of AI tools that they would go to when they were doing homework, and they either couldn't ask parents or didn't want to bother parents. They couldn't access teachers or felt that the teachers didn't actually know how to explain things in a way they could understand. And it's kind of funny, there were different ways in which children used AI. So some did say, we just go and get the answer and put it in. But I wouldn't say that was the general finding. I would say more often children were saying they used it to try to understand how to solve something. So they're like, AI gives me different options. So to tell me you could solve it in this way, that way, this is simplified. I don't know, that's how they found it really helpful to understand homework. They would sometimes take photos of, and this was very common, which was new to me, I'm older, but they would take a photo of like a math equation and just upload it and be taught how to do it correctly, and then ask, let's say, ChatGPT, okay, give me other equations that are similar to this so I can practice what I just learned. So children were using it in ways that could help them learn and problem solve. But I think one of the questions that I was kind of thinking of is what's happening to the relationship between the children and the teachers. So are children bypassing going to the teacher to ask for help and going straight to AI? What does this mean when there's research that shows that the relationship between the teacher and children, especially when children are kind of from lower socioeconomic backgrounds or not doing so well, this relationship can actually help them improve their learning outcomes and their well-being. So it's not only about grades, it's also about children and their well-being, and teachers know their backgrounds, they know their experiences, they know what's happening in the families, and AI doesn't know this. So what is happening to this relationship? And another question is, how is teachers' use of AI? So because AI is making things very automated, it's saving a lot of time. What's happening with teachers? Are they trying to automate things a bit more because it makes things makes grading faster? What's that doing to homework? How's that shaping the learning experience of children? So children's right to education. I didn't really talk about rights, but I think their rights to, I don't know, education, things like inclusion, well-being, I don't know, many.
Great, thank you very much, Sandra. I have a question for Aisha, which is based on the research that you've done at DFC on generative AI and EdTech, what do you see as the most urgent data governance issues in this area?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I think from our DFC research, specifically this Gen AI in EdTech report, I think perhaps I can talk about three main priorities when it comes to data governance. So the first one is the priorities to really require a child rights and data protection impact assessment before any Gen AI tool or any new AI feature embedded into an existing EdTech product in school. I think this is also something Sandra referred to as well. They're like embedded into the existing tools because what we found in all 5 case studies is they raise privacy concerns, and some of them are same or similar to what we have been observing in the past few years, looking at EdTech, but some of them are particular and specific to the Gen AI features. And none of them fully met the standards and the age-appropriate design code. And schools are often left with little real say once these features, add-ons are embedded, especially to the already existing and used ones in schools. So this is really key. And the second one is children's education data should be used only for education. This is really clear, with clear accountability for like who controls it, where it goes, why, and with no default tracking, profiling, advertising, or any other commercial use. Which again, as I mentioned, we found across 5 case studies. And the third priority, which is I think the most important one, arguably, is children should have a say in decisions that affect them, like Amelia was saying, and also need to have access to complaint and redress routes. These should be easy for them, really accessible, child-friendly. So the remedies should be there available to them, which is very unfortunately we couldn't see in any of the tools. So I would say these 3 are the priorities. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. And Kasia, how have you seen EdTech and AI tools changing your everyday teaching and your interactions with students?
I cannot lie, talking about efficiency and the fact that all the teachers are using ChatGPT or Gemini to just increase the efficiency, writing reports, emails, everything that needs to be done for 30, 60 students. And again, I think that there is a lack of regulations and rules for that. But in terms of teaching and having AI and EdTech in the classroom, that is a game changer, definitely, for us teachers. And we can see the inclusion, definitely, with the robotics, which is my specialization. This is the dream work. So when you have 7 children working on one project, so we're working with Fable Robots, which is a modular design. You can create whatever you want. We have children creating clothes, jewelry, drawing facial expression, coding, designing, and running around the robot. You cannot differentiate which child is a SEN child, which one is the highest achiever. And this is the beauty. This is the beauty of working with robotics. This is the beauty of working with hands-on approach, any hands-on approach, EdTech or robotics or any devices that can be taken out of the classroom, can be checked and tested in a real-life situation. AI and using platforms like LBQ, which is learning by questions. I do understand your point of view when you said children may feel frustrated because they cannot ask the question. And I think we've got a self-checkout situation that when we're in the shop and it's fine when it goes fine, but then we do need a human to ask a question and there is no one to ask this question to. I do understand that. However, I think in our school, we're trying to find a balance while we're working with those apps, we're working in the classroom. When we see, so teachers can see the progress of their children on the screen, stop the lesson, explain the question that they may have troubled with. So I can see a lot of that. In the same time, children using AI, well, we do have to emphasize plagiarism. We do have to emphasize bias. But again, this is our role. This is why online safety is not just don't talk to a stranger. It's also what is AI? What is AI chatbot? And we are using Common Sense Media platform, which they are absolutely amazing. So they've created a framework for the connected education for the connected world 2020 edition. So set up all the rules for the online safety. And they have a massive number of lessons that we can take and teach our children. I am teaching year 5 and 6 at the moment about AI, but again, as I was talking about online safety, I feel like that should be shifted again to year 3 and 4 probably. So yes, EdTech platforms and AI makes a massive difference, and they all make a massive difference in our teaching and learning for our children. I think they do open a lot of and a vast sea of opportunities for them. But there is, and I'll keep repeating, there is lack of regulations. And someone mentioned before that they should know that they have rights. I don't think they do know. At the moment, talking about online safety, although we're not trying to threaten them, that there is so much danger in the online safety world, it does sound like. I think we have to open it more to, yes, it's okay, you're safe, go and explore. but we couldn't do it because it is not safe. And we are very lucky being an LGFL, London Grid for Learning school, which means we've got our filtering system and monitoring system that help us and our children to stay safe. And we've got platforms that are embedded by them, like Busy Things and J2E, that we are using, that we know that are safe, that we know that we can leave our children with those platforms and they can do it and choose whatever they want, and their data is safe and they can play any of the games they want. Yes.
Great, thank you so much. Emily, I would just wanted to turn to you and ask, how do students feel about AI that's used in EdTech?
Well, I think we're aware how AI can be double-sided. I mean, on one hand, it's brilliant. I've used it myself. I was preparing for a French mock and I used ChatGPT to generate practice questions for speaking, which was a resource I didn't previously have access to, and helped me build my confidence. I've also used Snapchat AI to help me, as you were saying, with questions, to give me explanations, to help me understand like what the EdTech couldn't fully explain to me. And it can provide, tailored assistance on apps, and it can be brilliant. It can help engage students. However, as a young person now, I also worry about the bias with AI because I'm aware that in 2020, the AI that was used to regulate GCSE grades was favouring children from private schools. And you can't improve the data given to the AI because it picks up on biases and disparities already in society, and it exacerbates them. So, for example, perhaps an AI wouldn't recommend a woman to go into a physics career because perhaps there are less women in physics than in biology, for example. So I think the bias is quite worrying. And there's also the data protection side. We don't know where our data is going when we put it into ChatGPT or Snapchat AI. I personally don't always trust all these websites, seeing as I'm constantly getting notifications asking me to track location. And it's not just in like the stuff we choose to use, but in stuff there are other EdTech devices that use AI to adapt to our questions. And sometimes the terms and conditions are clear. You can read them and it feels like your data is being used in a fair way for your education. But other times it feels that maybe when you have to turn to AI because the EdTech hasn't explained something to you properly and you're trying to avoid a detention, then there's a certain risk involved that not everybody is aware of, because I know you're talking about cybersecurity lessons. We never got cybersecurity lessons. Well, my class certainly didn't get cybersecurity lessons about AI. We got the classic cyberbullying and basic data protection, but we have to self-teach on the dangers of AI. And seeing as it's incorporated within EdTech and we don't know the dangers of it, and yet we have to use it, that seems quite problematic. So yeah, it has its benefits, but it also is worrying in some ways as well.
Great. Thank you all. This panel is really making me think about the extent to which people understand, including children, that they have rights, and also the extent to which people in different roles have choices or not about what they're undertaking in their in their work as teachers or in their experience as students. And I find this really very interesting to think a little bit about the different kinds of contexts and the kinds of space that people have to act from, from different roles and in different positions. So that's my chair's reflection. But now I'd actually really like to open to the floor. There's so many questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take them in clumps. So I'm going to take 3 questions at a time, if that's okay for our panelists. And then that means that we'll hear from more people. All right. So by the way, can you just let us know your name as you ask your question?
Shall I ask my question now?
Ask your question, then we're going to go to Franco in the blue, and then we're going to go to the, yes, all right.
Thank you for that very much. My name's Sally Latham. I'm the education lead at Wikimedia UK and on the Children's Media Foundation. But prior to that, I was in the classroom for over 2 decades. So I just want to actually say thank you to Amelie for raising the 2020 results fiasco as well. There's not enough time for me to start on that. Just going back to something that people have alluded to already, I know Sanjay mentioned equity. And obviously, as we become more and more digital, the issue of digital poverty becomes more and more prevalent. And I know there's a lot of awareness about that in terms of access to tech, but I think recently there's been a move to understand that digital poverty as also including poor media literacy, which we know will limit chances as people progress into education, into employment, into whatever their life brings. And I know the Digital Poverty Alliance have done some research on this in terms of things like the use of AI, and this will be done very well in some schools where children will be used to use it responsibly and effectively, and other children aren't doing that. They're going home and using the free version of ChatGPT, and when they then potentially, get to university, they're finding there's real barriers there because they're not being taught to use this effectively. I know it's been put on the curriculum, the curriculum assessment review from year 3, which is great, but we also know that if something's not formally assessed, there'll be a huge discrepancy in how it's taught. And some schools just do not have the means and the capacity. It's a bit like Oracy. That's amazing that Oracy is on the curriculum, but it's not going to be taught well in every school because schools don't have the capacity, and the DfE have given no money to train teachers to do this, to become media literacy experts. So my question really is, how do you see this affecting the educational attainment gaps? Do you think that this movement into the digital age is going to increase or decrease the existing attainment gaps, or create new ones, potentially?
Thank you. Next question.
Mine really builds on what you're saying. So perfect. Yeah, the preamble for me was really the paradox between, on the one hand, expecting children to develop criticality, even though there are practical challenges. We know that it's going to be hopefully embedded more firmly in the curriculum, yet to be seen how that's going to be implemented. So yeah, again, we don't know what that's going to look like. And then on the other hand, those technologies are deployed in the classroom without a great degree of criticality in the first place, right? And of course, you very usefully are saying how there have to be changes, especially in terms of designing those products more safely, that can then allow children to be to use them in ways that would be advisable. So my practical question, building also exactly on the same acknowledgement that there isn't strong media literacy right now education. Ofcom research in the last few years, they've also collected responses about how whether children can recall having attended any sort of media literacy class with a focus on internet safety in the last year. And the number of responses of children say, yes, we have, I can recall, that is pretty alarming. And we know that anyway, that it's kind of patchy, that kind of education, the provision of education. So my question is more practical, which is, what would be the key piece of advice that you would give school right now in this very complex landscape within which there is this paradox going on between media literacy not being fully available, especially for those children that come from underrepresented and more marginalized backgrounds. And on the other hand, yes, wanting to see changes in terms of how EdTech is provided and deployed, but that isn't happening just yet.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. So I'm Tim Fowler at Bristol. I'm interested in the rise of EdTech and its effects on parents, I suppose in 2 ways. So first, in creating an educational experience that parents just don't understand, so different from the one that they went through. And second, maybe specifically to Amelie, whether we think children are going to chatbots where they might have used to go to parents for advice or the questions you were speaking about. So the effects of these rise on parents.
Great, thank you. Just to summarize for the panelists, we have 3 questions. One is about the potential for the creation of attainment gaps in relation to the introduction of AI. The second is what advice you might have to schools on technology literacy, especially critical literacy. And the third is the effects on parents and the parent-child relationship.
Maybe I can start I'll try with the first question. So just to say, like, I think I mentioned it, when we went to the different schools, there were really different policies on how AI is taught, whether it's approached or not. And what I, from my own kind of observations, is the schools that had a more, not necessarily pro-tech, but they were pro-teaching children how to use tech to their advantage and to use it responsibly and including AI, how to think about it critically. They tended to have a very creative approach to using these kind of technologies in the classroom. So they incorporated them into, I don't know, lots of different lessons, arts, and using Canva. So I don't know, like one example is type in a description of something you want to see in Canva AI, and then they get this poster of something, and then the teacher asks them, okay, what do you think of this? Is this what you had in mind? And the child is usually like, no, not really. Like, okay, let's improve the writing, let's add more description. So there are ways to use it to improve your thinking, your problem solving, to creativity and all of that. And I felt in the schools that kind of tended to steer away from tech. Like there's one school where they tried to implement a no screen day, which included interactive whiteboards, which was very tricky for teachers because they didn't really know how to deal with that really. They tended to use things a lot less creatively. Children just felt they weren't getting the support they needed. They wanted more. They wanted more from the schools. They wanted to be taught how to use this tech like more in a way that would benefit them and their learning. And I think also one of the things kind of we've tended to observe is that children from maybe lower sets, children from maybe lower socioeconomic backgrounds who didn't have parents they could go to and ask questions, who didn't feel they could talk to their teachers, those were children who tended to go to AI a bit more to get answers to their questions. So how is this, like, I think there is more of a gap. Like if a child can't go to their teacher and talk to them and is then going to AI, what's happening to that relationship? So I don't know if that answers it somehow, but.
I would say there is, or in our school, there is a lot of work done on prompting, just like you mentioned. And I think that does encourage them, our children, to just think about their creative writing. So I would prompt my children, well, I would show them a photo generated by AI and ask them, I want you to do exactly the same. Make it exactly the same. So they have to prompt, they have to describe the image. They have to learn how to use the adjectives and nouns to create exactly the same thing. The interesting thing is, I love what Amelia said about preparing for her exams. And my children, I've got a 14 and 17 years old, they're telling me that it's people in their 40s that are crazy about ChatGPT, not GCSE children, not primary school children, okay? They are much, much smarter than we think. In fact, they are very smart. Every single child, they are super smart. But they just don't know things yet. But if they knew, they would be able to thrive in every environment. Now, answering your question, Franco, I think less is more. Less is more. So don't go crazy with technologies that you can use. Don't go crazy with EdTech that can be used because the market is flooded. I go to BET every year. I go to SEN shows every year to get some inspiration. I talk to other schools. So recommendation is a huge thing, but talking. So going through the regulations, going through the policies that they have in place, so we know something about the product before we even grab and use it in our school. Less is more. Have 1, 2, 3 platforms that you're using across the whole school. Don't be bombarded by different things because then it's so easy to be lost. And children and their data is so important not to be shared. And the third question about the parents, if I may, I would say at the beginning, parents may be very reluctant about the fact that we start so early as in nursery with our computing lessons. They may say, oh, screen time, really? There are just 3 or 4. What they don't know is my computing lesson in nursery for the first 2 terms, as I said, is online safety only. They don't touch a device. They may work with the floor robots, playing around, listening, learning about coding, which they don't even realize that they learn. But it's online safety, how to stay safe online. The online world is your playground. You have to know the rules. Now, parents may not know that what we teach them is how to pause and stop. So my first probably 3 lessons in reception is I'm going to give you an iPad, but just for 5 minutes. And then, whoa, you have to deal with the cry and tears. Because when I say stop, it's stop. You have to learn how to stop. So for the parents going back, I think we doing their job very often. We teaching the children how to find the balance. We just had that, now we're going to go outside and have some play. It's still part of the computing lesson. We just played with robots. Now I want you to design your own robot. What will you do with this robot? So we're thinking computing, sometimes we're thinking screen only. We're thinking technology, sometimes we're thinking, oh no, again. But it's creativity, that's what I see. EdTech inclusion, that's what I want to see. That finally I will be able to address every single child in the classroom with the same task. I know it's supposed to be a written task, but what about you creating a slideshow? What about you drawing me a thing on Canva and submitting it as your answer for a question? I think that's vital. I think that's where the future sits.
Hi, John.
Okay, thank you. Great questions. I think I'm conscious of time, so I would like to, if that's okay, to focus on the questions specific to the technology literacy, AI literacy, and maybe share a few good practice examples that I came across, especially in Scotland. Because I'm based in Edinburgh. So I think one thing there, especially when we consider different groups of children, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different abilities, disabilities. Although what I'm going to say now is not like a really fast, straightforward approach, but I think it is worth considering for England, perhaps as well, is when we look at the curriculum. So in Scotland, child rights is in the curriculum. So children, aged 7, 8, and also like high school, well, everyone learns about child rights. And AI now is, becoming a part of that as well. And we are seeing really good practice examples across different local authorities, different schools here, is actually how schools are, they're thinking more about how to talk about these issues because it is in the curriculum. And also because teachers have so much to do and there's so many, other priorities and, different parts of the curriculum as well, when it is really embedded and really, a little bit more clearly framed, specific to child rights and digital technologies. That also works really well. And also, as I mentioned, teachers have really good practice examples I came across, and they're great sources by public authorities here as well. So I think that might be something to consider. And also, it's a little bit ironic that, we also talked about that in a report, although not from an AI literacy perspective, but there's so many differences across 4 countries across the UK. But children have the same rights and they should all know about their rights and, how AI impacts them and how they can navigate, challenges when they actually interact with AI. And so the education system is different, their rights are the same. So I think that is something to think about and how this could be maybe a little bit more mainstream across the country as well. I think I would just say that when it's in the curriculum, there are really good practices that it make it work and also accessible to diverse groups of children, no matter where they're located. That's from me.
Thank you. Emily.
So I'll start with a parent-child relationship. So personally, from personal experience, I'm quite close to my parents. So for me, I don't feel like it's impacting my relationship that much because the main questions I'm looking at online are logical questions like mathematical or science questions perhaps, which either my parents either wouldn't know how to answer, they probably would, but they might not they might be busy. They work from home, or often they've forgotten a lot of GCSE biology, and the syllabus has changed. And in that case, it just means I'm able to move on with my work sort of more fluidly. It means I don't have to, we don't have to grapple with it. I guess it does sort of damage relationship in a way, as in there's sort of less reliance, but I don't really feel like that personally impacts me too severely. I do get help sometimes from my mum, who used to work in education, into more writing questions. But I think AI is great for initiative as well. There are different sort of ways to look at it. I don't think there's any right answer for how it impacts the parent-child relationship. I think it just differs so much from family to family that, I can't really give a definitive answer. But I think if used well, and sometimes I still won't understand something that AI has told me. I still need to go to my parents if I need something more. It helps. It helps me work more smoothly, and it helps sort of bridge the gap a bit. In terms of AI literacy, well, that's something I worry about quite a bit, because I feel as if I'm not the best with computers. I was always given the bad computer at school. My computing lesson consisted of making a website. Because the computing teacher left, we couldn't even take computer science as a GCSE. Anyone who wanted to take it had to move schools or not take it. So, there was one person who had to move to a private school in order to take it, which seems, quite unfair, seeing as, you have to pay to learn how to use this, or you have to teach yourself. And seeing as it's such a big part of the future, I'm quite worried about that. I mean, I'm literally having to decide to teach myself some of these skills over the summer. So I think that a national curriculum for AI and computer skills that's more universal is really important, just to make it more accessible for everybody.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm aware of time. Is it all right, panelists, if we could take an extra 5 minutes past the end of what we had said? Is that all right? If you need to leave, that's fine as well. I'm going to take another round of questions. One in the back, one here in the brown, and is there one final question?
It might be online.
Or are there any online questions?
Is the one.
Okay, that's from you. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Great.
Thank you. Angela Colbert from the University of Sheffield would like to ask the panel for their views on how we might develop children and young people's critical understanding of AI tools and systems when its design is so opaque, even for adults. Has the panel any views or advice on tools, approaches, not necessarily digital, to supporting children to design AI systems themselves, to explore implications and how child rights by design can be built into the environment?
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kasia Kostelka, I'm a developmental psychologist at the University of London. And I wanted to follow up on something that Kasia mentioned about some of the children who might not be high achievers, but actually thrive working with robots or working with EdTech. Do you find from your experience and also from your research that access to EdTech maybe levels the playing field for children with learning differences, or whether actually it exacerbates some of the difficulties that already exist in those non-digital environments. I'm just wondering what's your view on this?
Great. And
Valerie, hi, Judge Business School. My question is, it sounds like, first of all, thank you. It sounds like the current state as it is today with EdTech, other than what you're doing, Kasha, and the amazing work that you're doing, but just in general, it sounds like the current state is not respectful of child rights and is problematic. You have a solution put forward with the age-appropriate design code. What do you do between now and the implementation of that? Because there are thousands and thousands of children using these tools today.
You're right. I think that was the last one.
Yes, that was the last question. Go on.
You're absolutely correct. We are blind, to be honest. We don't really know where we're going. We're trying to feel the ground while we're going with the EdTech and with everything that we want to include, because it's so tempting, because we're going to save so much time and we may do this and that, and that may do the whole moderation for us in writing, but at what costs? You're absolutely correct. And as I said before I started, as much as it's comforting to know that there is so many people talking about it, it's worrying that we don't know about it. And I think that's what we should start. We should start educating educators. So we know more about what we can then pass on our students. So we feel safe in what we're doing. And I said less is more. And I said we're trying to reduce the number of things that we're doing, so we keeping them safe. We're talking about data. We making sure that if we are creating the usernames and the logins, they are secure using usernames. We are making sure that this is in place. This is really it. It is not enough. It is not enough, and I think it's so much that should be done. So much that should be done. And yes, answering Kasha's question, it's brilliant for the SEN children working with robotics, with hands-on approach in all of the devices, with all of the devices that we're using. It's fantastic because every single child feels important. They can actually utilize their talents, their interests. They can feel valuable in a group of. They are working with the highest achievers, and they feel equal. This is amazing. This is amazing that the smile that they have, the value of the lesson that they take, they cannot wait for the next lesson. Absolutely. So yes, that helps enormously. But again, we don't have that. We don't have the rules. We don't. As a school, as an educator. And I'm really privileged that in my school, I am
J'ai été à quiche hier soir, mais je vais la ressortir pour qu'elle soit bien à température ambiante.
I am the computing lead, which means I teach computing from nursery up to year 6. I know what's happening.
Je me demande si je vais pas faire pareil avec ta. Tu vas l'apprendre à midi aussi, tu crois?
The digital literacy makes not at all, because as you mentioned,
Magnifique.
there is no clear structure for the curriculum for those that need to be taught. So we need that, and we are talking about that with our local borough, that we need a clear framework. So it's not just our school leading and being ambassadors for Common Sense Media and leading those lessons. It should be, like Emily said, she has no idea. That should not have happened.
Aisha, do you want to come in?
Okay, yes, I can. Thank you. So perhaps, again, for the sake of time, I might focus on Angela's question. So I think about teaching children when actually adults ourselves are not really, sure about what's going on. So I think the key perhaps is not to aim for children to, to fully see and understand, inside AI. Because as Angela also said, adults also cannot either in most cases. So what matters more like helping them to learn about and perhaps to question it more critically, what it is doing, what data it might rely on, who it works well for, who it might disadvantage, who's responsible for its decisions. So, and again, we see, I think, a lot of these questions. I will refer back to Scotland, the curriculum here. So there's a lot of discussions going on and already existing practices in the past 2 years about this. So I think there's some good practices we can draw upon on. So one useful approach is to let children build or like imagine their own, AI systems themselves. And what a good outcome might look like, or the challenges or risks in that context through discussions, with researchers, teachers. Again, some work is being done about that. So maybe naming a good practice example, because I've been referring it to a lot in the previous question as well, is Children's Parliament in Scotland has done some great work. So about teaching AI, AI literacy and thinking about child rights, because I think Angela also referred to child rights by design and involving children actually in those discussions. So there are perhaps some things to explore there, and then think about how we might actually think about those in the actual school context, classrooms, in the context of curriculum, and how to matching those to the existing curriculum, outcomes. And hopefully there might be some news specifically in the future on AI literacy and child rights in other parts of the country as well. Yeah, thank you.
Sandra? Briefly.
I think I just want to talk about inclusion, because you did mention inclusion with the robots, and you found that actually helped with that. I think some of the research pointed to inclusion not always being considered within these apps. EdTech tends to be, I think there's this kind of around EdTech that, EdTech equals you can access things easier, or it's good for children with special educational needs because they can, I don't know, it makes things easier to read, they can translate, they can this and that. But then when it comes to apps within mainstream classrooms, it's not always the case. So there are things like we found timers embedded in apps that are actually very distressing for children who can't complete a task within the set time, or whose homework is being timed and who are getting negative points because they're taking longer than other children to complete something, or children who are always lower down on the leaderboard. So there's lots of gamification, leaderboards, rankings, comparing to others. And so it's great for some children. They find it fun. They like the comparison and the competition. But what about children who are always low down in their rankings? What does that do to them and their well-being and their motivation to learn? So yes, I think one right that's really missing from at least these mainstream apps would be inclusion, the right to inclusion.
Great, thank you. I've held Emily to provide Emily with the last word on any of these questions.
I think I'll take a look at the AI tools question. So I think they're just giving children a chance to be in a sort of a safe space and be able to interact with AI and interact with the digital world and the tools. Build the skills not through being taught, on a board, but through actually doing is a brilliant way of just teaching and learning. And sometimes EdTech can be inaccessible and it can break and it can not work and students can get blamed, and that can sort of break down the trust between students and EdTech and perhaps make students feel bitter towards learning because they're being constantly blamed for the EdTech going wrong. Like say an EdTech goes wrong the day before the deadline when they are doing the homework, that's going to, and then they get blamed for not doing their homework. That's happened multiple times to my friends, and that has just made them resent the EdTech and, gave them quite a negative relationship with that teacher of that lesson. So I think it is brilliant, and it's transformational for helping you learn, but there's definitely still a long way to go with education of EdTech and designing it.
I'm Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you to all the panelists. I think the finishing point about transformational is really significant because a transformation doesn't always imply only a positive or only a seamless change. And I think that we've really been sitting in the transformation in this panel. So thank you very much to everyone.